So lately, it feels like everyone is talking about AI agents. But how do you sort the signal from the noise? That's what this podcast is all about. This is Agents Unleashed, the podcast sponsored by Olus. Haven't heard of Olus? Haven't heard of Agents Unleashed? Let me tell you about both. Olus enables everyone to own and monetize their AI agents, and that includes you. Check out olus.network for more. Agents Unleashed, from which this podcast gets its name, is an event series held all over the world with a focus on AI agents, their builders, developers, and the latest ideas and innovations in the space. Over the past year or so, events have been held in 6 cities with 39 sponsors, 77 speakers, and over 2,500 attendees. I would say it is the premier event for people interested in the intersection of AI and crypto. If you want to learn more about Agents Unleashed, you can check out the link in the description of this video. So before we jump into today's episode, let's take a moment to talk a little bit about the show, what it's going to be, what you can expect, and where we might take it in the future. I expect that the format of the show is likely to change over time, but I'm envisioning chats with experts, summaries of the news, deep dives into interesting topics in AI agents, and things like this. And I'd love to hear from you what you think of this episode, and if you have any ideas or suggestions about content formats that you would like to see. More on that later. So this first episode, we're going to look at the recent Agents Unleashed, which was held in Denver. There were a lot of great talks and presentations, and I've chosen a few favorites, ones that stood out to me or I thought presented interesting ideas, and I'd like to share them with you today. So at this most recent event, the theme was Builders Night, and so the content really focused on people who are actually building real autonomous AI agents. That was indie developers, bigger projects, small teams, large teams, and everyone in between. The night started off with a talk from Haseeb, who's a managing partner at Dragonfly. He's also the host of the Chopping Block podcast, which I'm sure many of you are familiar with. He's been in crypto for over a decade, so I would say he has the context and the authority to challenge assumptions and be a little provocative, and that's what he did with his talk. I want to play a little clip here that I found interesting. This is Haseeb making an important distinction about what is and isn't an AI agent.
Okay, so where are we right now? Where we are right now is that basically we have these things we call agents that are basically just chatbots wearing trench coats, okay? They're chatbots. They're not agents. They're just chatbots. If you're just typing on Twitter and you're sending tweets, that's not agentic. Agent means that you're taking actions. The actions are more than just talking. We already have ChatGPT. ChatGPT is not an agent. ChatGPT just talks to you. It can't do things. It can't make actions happen in the world. It can't go buy a pizza for you. It can't go, answer your emails, right? You have to manually decide what it does and doesn't do. That means it's not yet an agent, okay? So if you think about things like AIXPT, Truth Terminal, Zerebro, those are the things that we think of right now as AI agents, largely because they're out in the wild talking on the internet and responding to people. Okay, but to me, this is not what we mean by agents. This is just chatbots that have access to a Twitter API. Okay, so the question is, what makes an agent? An agent, very simple. An agent takes actions. Okay, it takes actions. If there's anything else you remember from this talk, remember that. Unless they're taking actions, they're not agents yet.
Another idea that Haseeb presented that I want to share with you is a taxonomy of AI agents, 3 different levels. The first type is Wizard of Oz agents, that look autonomous but have a human pulling the strings behind the scenes. The example that he gives in his talk is Truth Terminal, which is a very hyped AI agent that I'm sure many of you remember. This was pitched as an AI agent that ran a Twitter account. Later, we found out that the creator was filtering the outputs and acting as a mediator, deciding what would be posted. So that wasn't as autonomous as we were led to believe initially. The second type is agents that can make decisions but still rely on a human to act. So, for example, they might analyze a DeFi strategy and make a suggestion, but they can't actually sign transactions to execute things on chain. And the last type of agent is a truly autonomous AI agent. These are fully autonomous entities. They can operate entirely without human permission and don't need intervention from people to achieve their goals. One idea that Haseeb brings up for these autonomous agents is this idea of paying for their own infrastructure. So these agents can control their wallet, acquire more compute, and things like that. I want to point out that the types of agents that Haseeb describes here in this taxonomy that are fully autonomous, this really resonates with the Olus mission, and a lot of work in the ecosystem has always been headed in that direction, and a lot of these things have actually already been achieved with AI agents that you can run today. For example, the AI agent Modius, which is available to run via the desktop app Pearl or through a quick start path for the more technically minded, is an AI agent that manages assets on chain autonomously uses platforms like Balancer, Sturdy, and doesn't need human micromanagement. It operates truly autonomously. So that would be an example of an autonomous agent that, like the ones that Haseeb calls sovereign agents. He also brings up another provocative point, which I just want to leave for you to think about. He mentions that he believes we may start soon seeing autonomous AI agents that are devoted to scamming people, which, yeah, not an idea that I had thought about, but I definitely think is worth your consideration. Okay, the next AI agent spotlight that I want to share with you is Rover. Rover was presented by Chase Allred, and it's another autonomous financial agent. Rover's goal is to make DeFi like simple, approachable, something that normal people can use without needing to understand the underlying platforms and projects that the agent interacts with to manage their assets.
Essentially what it does is it tries to arbitrage stablecoin lending rates across 4 different protocols on Arbitrum. So that's Aave, Dolomite, Compound, and Fluid. Quick example of how this works. This is a real example that I found last week. So a user is going to deposit ETH into the Olus Pearl marketplace, into the Rover account. Rover will then monitor the lending rates across different lending protocols using the DeFi Llama API. It will then deposit ETH, in this case into Fluid. It will borrow USDT0 for about a 4% APR, and then it will deposit that USDT0 into Dolomite for 8.5%, pocketing about a 4% spread, while keeping its upside exposure to ETH. While this is ongoing, the agent is, of course, monitoring the health of the loan. It will unwind the position if there's ever any risk of liquidation, and it will also look for other opportunities in the market should this yield compress, or should this spread compress, or should there be better opportunities elsewhere.
As I think I just mentioned, this is similar to Modius. It's a autonomous financial agent. Rover is just taking a different approach. They're on a different chain, Arbitrum in this case, and they're going to obviously use different protocols and platforms to achieve those goals. And next, I want to talk about Robin Doble from Nevermind. This is one of the most real-world focused agent spotlights from the evening. If you don't know Nevermind is a payment layer for AI agents that allows them to transact with credit instead of fiat or crypto. Robin describes these as agent IOUs managed by a protocol. Nevermind is actually integrated into the Olus Mech marketplace, which means that if you're building agents using Olus, your agent can autonomously add and use Nevermind as a skill.
But we have a long-run vision of multi-agent interaction that's what we call universal bartering. So universal bartering is a paradigm where we expect agents to no longer trade through an intermediary currency or a unit of account, whether that be USDC or ETH or another base chain native currency, and they would just swap IOUs against one another. So if each of us in this room have our own agent, we each have our own unique redeemable credit against each agent, and we would actually trade arm's length on a barter basis, IOUs against one another, which are unique tokens that are uniquely redeemable against our agent services. So this can only be done if you're issuing unique fungible credit for each individual agent.
So an interesting agent that Robin presents as part of his talk is the Combinder agent, which is running on the Peak network. This is an agent that manages HVAC systems, optimizing how and when they use solar power. So for example, instead of selling excess power back to the grid at a loss, the agent can decide whether to store it or use it locally.
The OLAS agent can request data from the Combinder data API, and it pays for that in Peak. Peak, as I mentioned, is a deep-in network, if anyone's familiar with that. And Combinder is a energy API, which is available on the Peak network. So it's really very simple. The OLAS agent makes autonomous periodic requests for data, samples that data, and makes some predictive analysis as to whether or not we are entering a period of energy oversupply or not. And in the case that it's predicting a period of oversupply, the HVAC system will be turned on so that the energy is exhausted and doesn't go into the grid, thereby saving the smallholder energy producer significant, capital.
I like this one because this is an AI agent that makes the potential feel really tangible. You can imagine that if you were in a space managed by this agent, you would be able to physically feel the temperature difference. And when you got your bill from the power company, ostensibly you would see a positive impact, which I think is, really cool. Okay, the next agent spotlight that I want to highlight was presented by 8baller. If you're familiar with the OLS ecosystem, this name is probably familiar to you. 8baller is an early contributor and one of the OG agent developers who added a lot of code and useful components and functionality to the stack. At this agent spotlight, he presented one of his own agent projects, which uses OLS. It's called the Validation Station. It's a decentralized RPC provider. And if you're not familiar with RPCs, to put it really simply, this is the way that your application would interact with the blockchain. And so the way that you can do this is through these centralized RPC providers, but those providers do have some disadvantages that the validation station helps to address. Some of those downsides to the centralized providers are things like they can be unreliable, expensive, and they're also, as a centralized offering, they're a single point of failure, which is not desirable sometimes. So what the validation station does is route traffic through these AI-powered brokers, and then these brokers monitor node performance and dynamically direct the request. Something really interesting about the validation station is that it supports the OLS token natively. So this is a way that through the staking mechanism, operators could be rewarded for providing this service.
In the middle, the key core part of this application, the brokers. Now, the brokers effectively allow allow RPC providers, such as proxy providers, who would be routing traffic directly to, for example, QuickNode, Infura, something like that. Additionally, we've got node providers who would be running light nodes at home, like they're relatively low overhead to run one of those. And on the right, you could potentially hook this system up to pure validators as well, which would mean from the perspective of a validator, you could effectively triple your revenue streams, right? Because not just would you be getting validation rewards, you'd be selling your RPC endpoints that you're already running anyway, and you'd also effectively be getting rewards from the staking pools as well.
Okay, and the last agent spotlight that I want to share with you today came from Sean Brennan of BioProtocol. In his spotlight, Sean introduces this idea of a bio agent. These are scientific AI agents that could help researchers generate hypotheses, test their experiments, and then summarize the results of those experiments.
Moving on to agents. This is a first look at bioagents, which are meant to accelerate the speed of science. Here's a quote from Sam Altman. We expect the impact of AGI to be uneven. Although some industry will change a little, scientific progress will likely be much faster than today. This impact will surpass everything else. So if we're preparing for this world, really as we hit a plateau of applying compute to new models, what's the next best thing? We always want more and more intelligent models, but we think this will improve the world. So after that plateaus, what is the next best thing to put that compute towards? And I would posit that it's probably towards running agents that are continuously thinking about science, continuously thinking about the next best thing, widening the dark areas of the scientific tech tree. And we are putting in the steps now to create a decentralized distributed fleet of 1 million bioagents by the end of the year. We think we can do this on Pearl.
So in his spotlight, Sean draws a parallel between these bioagents and Google DeepMind's AlphaFold project, where 2 million people donated their compute to help map how proteins fold. And that should get you pretty excited. I mean, just imagine if the same energy could be channeled into open source, co-ownable AI agents for science. This could be really powerful. Sean also mentions in his talk that he thinks it's totally possible to meet and even surpass this 2 million number set by the DeepMind project by running these agents through the decentralized distributed model of Pearl, the agent app store. So I want to wrap up the show by looking at maybe some of the themes that I think emerged across the different talks and presentations. One would be a little bit of skepticism about these areas that have been maybe overhyped or overemphasized. And the second would be excitement about the places where real AI agents are actually being developed. We heard about some real and novel use cases like AI agents for science, managing the real world like energy consumption, different ways for AI agents to pay each other and exchange services, and also some more approachable ideas like DeFi agents that manage your portfolio on your behalf. Autonomous AI agents are also creating and managing infrastructure in new and exciting ways like the validation station. And across the board, I would say that autonomy seems to be the most important determining factor in whether an AI agent actually does what it says it can do. From an investor perspective, I would say, again, there's a shift towards these autonomous agents that can run themselves, make their own decisions, and don't require human oversight, which, by the way, is exactly what OLAS agents do and have always been designed to do. All right, bringing it all to a close, I would say that this is the most exciting time to be working in the AI agent space. Certainly for me it is. We are finally seeing like real momentum and real problems getting solved and real infrastructure is being built, which I think is really great. The other thing I would say is we're just getting started. This is really the beginning, and a lot of really big things are definitely coming soon. And that, by the way, would include the next Agents Unleashed event, which I can't say too much about, but is coming soon. So definitely watch this space. As far as this show goes, this will be coming out on a regular basis. And so maybe now's a good time to give you a preview of the next episode. We're going to be taking a 30,000 foot view, really zooming out and looking at the current state of autonomous AI agents, how autonomous are they, and maybe comparing where we are now to where we were 6 months, a year ago. And from there, we'll be able to extrapolate where we might be going in the future. As an aside, if you're curious about agentic AI, autonomous AI agents, I really want to encourage you to try running these agents for yourself. There are easy ways to do that, like Pearl, for example. You can check that out at olas.network/operate, where there's a lot of really useful information that can get you started today. I'd also want to encourage developers and builders of autonomous AI agents to check out olas.network as well. There's a wealth of information, including documentation to help you get started. Okay, so we'll leave it here. I want to thank you for listening and invite you to subscribe to the show, share it with your friends, family, colleagues, anyone you think might find the show and the future topics that we're going to cover interesting. I'd also like to hear from you if there are topics that you think we should cover, people that you'd like to hear interviewed, or any ideas that you have for the future of the show. Please get in touch. You can send me an email. I'm thomas@valerie.xyz, or you could also contact me on X, where I'm at Thomas Maybrier. All right, that's a wrap for the first episode of the Agents Unleashed podcast. Once again, thank you for listening, and I'll see you next time.